Boom.
Hello, this is Stephanie Powers, and this is the Break It Down show.
That's
Hello.
right. Hey, thanks for coming on. By the way, it's my birthday. And I was like, I cannot wait to talk to Stephanie Powers on her birthday.
Oh, Pete, it's not a great time to be celebrating anything, but I hope you are celebrating yours. Where are you located?
Yeah. I'm just down the road from you. I'm down in Orange County, down kind of by Newport Beach. So
I see. So in one way or another, you are affected by the fires, even if it's the drifting wind.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. We about a year ago, we had that big hangar over at El Toro. That burned down, and that was full of hazardous waste, and we couldn't put it out because it was too big, like the physical building, So, and this, it was LA's turn. Next week it could be our turn. The Santa Ana's and fire and canyons. Oh my goodness, we burn all the time.
And one of the great objections to our wonderful government and our officials is this is a place where we have earthquakes. Remember those? And we have fires, as we've seen. We have no evacuation plans. There are no communities that are given evacuation plans or approved, where communities will offer evacuation plans that are approved by the city and that we can have rehearsals. Wouldn't that be a genius idea? I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that when you have a population as large as ours and the propensity to have events that can be catastrophic, shouldn't you have an evacuation plan instead of the chaos that existed in the Pacific Palisades? But they had a homeowners association. They had a homeowners association, and yet they never had an evacuation plan. Where were their minds? Did they think they were just immune to it? We must stop being such narcissistic people that we don't understand our vulnerabilities. We are not gods. We are not going to survive even the smallest amount of disaster if we don't understand that we have to take the responsibility, because obviously our government officials don't, or are incapable of doing that. Don't you agree?
No, I do. I think it's fair to say us Californians like to try to be progressive and ahead of things. We don't mind paying taxes to have good governance.
Well, we pay the highest taxes in the country.
Right. And when that governance doesn't show up when you need it most, I mean, it's one thing to worry about conservation of this or protecting that. But if you can't reliably protect the very asset that you have the most of your money in for most people, then let us know and we'll handle that privately. But they act like they didn't do anything wrong. And it does not appear that that is the case. We all get the Santa Anas and fire and electricity, and we all understand that. But when we need you, you have to show up. And when you can't do it, you have to take accountability for it.
Oh, we have to have a governor who doesn't, at the drop of a hat, destroy our infrastructure by reducing the amount of reservoirs and pulling back on a mayor that pulls back on the budget for the firefighters.
Yeah.
That's intelligent, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you and I were talking off mic about the challenges then that are put upon the people. For example, rescuing horses, other animals, the elderly, our most seasoned citizens who aren't as mobile anymore, and maybe they live in a confined space. It's all of these things land on us individually to go to deal with it.
Therefore, if we understand that they land on us individually, then collectively we should organize ourselves. Yes. That's what, my generation was a generation of activists. I think we've lost a little bit of that. And I think you were a little bit in that generation as well. Let me just answer. I think this is my gardener saying.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to cover this by saying, this is the Break It Down show, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We've got the lovely Stephanie Powers here. You can always go to breakitdownshow.com to support us. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that because, so first off, your bio is ridiculous. It is this long. You can't even see it. It's so long. It says activist in there. Yeah. Activists to me seem to have evolved into something that's not reliably a good thing. They don't know when they won. They don't know how to include people. It's like you either follow me or you are the enemy. And that is
no. That's not what activism is. Activism
I think it's become
evolved.
that now for a lot of people.
Well, that's a tragedy. That's a big tragedy. We are not here to be dictators. We are not fascists, we activists. The woke people are fascists. They wish to have you use only their vocabulary. That is fascist, as far as I'm concerned. They wish to not have books in certain libraries. The last time that happened, I think it was called Hitlerism.
Sure.
Wasn't that? Does that sound familiar? That's the wokies.
It does.
Activism is what's happened over these fires with all the people who actually rolled their sleeves up and said, no, I'm not going to just sit by and wait for somebody else to do it. I'm going to do it myself. That's activism, and that's the activism I grew up with.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that we get back to that. And again, like when you have built something and it's worth following, you also get to say, not mission accomplished, but hey, we don't have to be a loud screeching voice anymore. We have to continue to grow our movement, right? And you go from being an activist to like having an organization.
It's not a movement. It's a way of thinking. It's a thought process. It's not a movement. Yeah. There doesn't have to be a movement. I don't have to have somebody thinking 100% the way I think. But if we need something in an emergency, we need to pull together and we need to use whatever our neighborhood watches are or our neighborhood associations are designed for, which is to have in place health and welfare for the communities that we live in the case of an emergency, because we cannot depend. We've seen that we cannot depend on our local officials. We can't depend on our state officials. So if we don't do it ourselves, who's going to do it for us? That's the way I grew up. And that's what I call activism.
I love it. I love it. One of my very good friends runs the Irvine Nature Conservancy down here, and they are a nonprofit, and they do wonderful work. And it's you know how big Irvine Nature Conservancy, it's thousands of acres of land, and they work to help make the government better at. We're going to take this creek and we're going to return it back to what it needs to be and do it properly, and we're going to educate kids. They do all this amazing stuff, and I know that this work kind of goes right to the heart of what you do with the William Holden Foundation, but that need to preserve these things, some of it does belong to us and not the government that represents portions of us, right? A lot of this can be done better through William Holden, his vision and what he wanted. My buddy Dave, we're going to have on next week, we're going to have on some of Dave's raptor experts talking about vultures, and it's amazing.
I just want to, apropos of what you're speaking of, is we've given our governments a chance. Every time there's a climate change conference, everybody stands there shaking hands, taking pictures, saying, aren't I wonderful? We've given our governments a chance. They haven't done anything. We've given our local officials a chance. What have they accomplished? So it is up to the individual. I mean, we have that kind of a country where this country was founded on a group of rabid individualists who made something, that believed in some idea and saw it through. We've now depended so much on everybody else doing it all for us that we're now rendered incapable of doing it ourselves, when at the end of the day, we're the only ones who can do it. Because our government officials are more interested in themselves or their political futures or something that they're going to find some reward in. And we just want to have our quality of life, and our lifestyle and our way of life is enough to have our reward. And in fact, in guarding the natural world, what do we want to do? We want to put this climate, this planet back to where it was before we started to destroy it, or we allowed our governments and our private interests and our corporations to begin to destroy it on our behalf because we bought into it. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I can't help but calling a spade a spade.
Well, especially right now, because we're feeling it here in Southern California, but they were feeling it in Hawaii. They were feeling it in Palestine, all these other places where you look around and you're like, hey, this is the time for you to be there, right? And look, we're a hard place to
what
govern.
Happens, you know, you have the disasters in the hurricane disasters. Who are the people that are there first? All the charities are there first. Where are we? Where is our government? Okay, FEMA comes along, and then they make even more complicated procedures and processes. Yeah. And the people who are dealing with things on the ground are Habitat for Humanity, some of these extraordinary former military guys who come and are right there at the rescue. The organization that I'm very fond of, which is Flight of Angels, which rescues, galvanizes people all over the country with horse trailers to go and rescue horses in crisis. And that's pretty much what we've done here. But now Fleet of Angels has dedicated itself to start feeding some of those horses. So we're all volunteering to actually do the process of getting the food to them and wetting the food and making sure they get fed twice a day. They didn't, in some of these stable yards, they didn't even have buckets to put water in. They have to be provided. You know, we think about all the component pieces of how you actually need to prepare for an emergency. Then you start to break it down and realize it's mega. It's the magnitude of the recovery is astonishing, and what we need to be prepared for on every front is that astonishing need.
Yeah. The folks at Rubicon are a bunch of former veterans.
The boys. The Rubicon. Oh my God, they're wonderful.
They bring those chainsaws, and they're like, they just, or whatever it is, right? Whatever you need, fabulous. They just, and a lot of times that is what we need.
No question. They're right there. No money, nothing. They're just there.
Yeah.
What are our governments doing?
Fantastic.
They're having press conferences. That's what they're doing.
It has not been a good week for those things. And gosh, look, as much as you and I can talk about this for a whole show, I want to talk about some other stuff with you too, because I hate to get away from the tragedy thing because it is so timely. And by the way, there is some good news. We just got news out of Hamas versus Israel. Hamas will never, ever again be in charge of the Palestinian leadership. And that just came down in the last 2 hours. So there's some good news out there. And I suppose if we were going to talk about look, your career is so incredible. I kind of don't even want to talk about Heart to Heart and man, because that stuff's decades ago. I want to talk about what.
Great. I just have to tell this person that I'm doing a Zoom.
Please, This is how busy Stefanie is. She's always doing things. This is great. What is the most interesting thing that you're doing day to day right now? Like, where is your passion at? I know you have a lot of passions, but where are you finding yourself most drawn?
Well, obviously, it's my greatest passion. I love my work. I love work as an actor. When the work is good and when everybody else we're all working for the same thing. That's a great feeling, and it's a pleasure. It's not just a way of making a living. It's also a great pleasure to express our artistic endeavors.
Yeah.
The most passionate endeavor that I have is obviously the protection of flora and fauna. The William Holden Wildlife Foundation is a 501c3 public charity, which I created after Bill's death in his name in order to construct and endow an idea of his, which was the addendum to wildlife conservation, the component of education within specific species conservation, which Bill started doing in the 1950s. In 1959, Bill created, while he was a big movie star, he created the first ever game ranch for the preservation of species in the whole of Africa. And it may very well have been the whole of the world. Nobody was thinking about preservation. Nobody had the word conservation in their vocabulary, let alone the idea of extinction. 1959. Imagine that. He was a visionary. So at the height of its protection, it was preserving and offering safe breeding areas for 37 species of East African wildlife in Kenya, on the slopes of Mount Kenya. 5 of those species are no longer visible in the wild.
Wow.
Sadly.
Yeah.
The one thing he always wanted to do before he died was to build an education center, a wildlife education center for local people, children, adults, to come and learn about their own biodiversity and learn the why of not to destroy or kill or cut down your vegetation, your habitat, and the precious biodiversity that allows us the quality of life we had on this planet. The important role within the food chain that all the animals and the bugs and the bees and the mammals and everything around us that we don't see or we take for granted provides us with. Making that connection to people rather than just saying, no, don't do that. Because we're not doing that anymore. There has to be a reason why. So we got our IRS status as a public charity in 1982, and we have been receiving massive amounts of students for free, thanks to our donors. Since then, we are serving and have been serving for the last 18 years, about 11,000 students a year. It was escalating to 12 and 13,000, but we had to reduce it back to about 11,000 because we were getting overcrowded and we weren't able to service all the people that we wanted to reach in a personal way. We also have an outreach program that goes into the bush, what we call the bush, which is very rural and deprived areas of tribal groups that live in subsistence conditions. And we've created a whole education program for another 6,000, close to 6,000 people in 7 locations. So that's a lot of people that we are servicing. Our mission statement is wildlife conservation through education and alternatives to habitat destruction. So let's talk about that last bit, the alternatives to habitat destruction, which is wrought a great deal by the way in which modern agricultural methods are being translated into the third world. Mostly what we've done, the United States in our aid programs and in many countries all over the world who have given aid and distributed aid and allowed for the over-chemicalization of the land through chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides, which have destroyed biodiversity, which have destroyed the ability for the ground to actually function without them, ever increasing not only the cost of farming by the purchase of ever increasing amounts of chemicals to fertilize the soil, which then becomes almost inert without it. We are introducing into many of these 7 rural areas that we have been servicing for these years with our outreach program, education program. We are creating model farms at those facilities to teach soil regeneration, how to take your otherwise burnt out small plot. These are all small shareholder farmers who are farming their subsistence crops on between 1 acre and 10 acres. This is not factory farming. This is the majority of farmers in rural areas of the developing world. They're not massive farmers. They're not massive landowners. They're all living on smaller plots. But those plots have been burnt out so frequently that they need to go and exploit other areas in order to get something from the soil, and in the process of doing that, they wind up burning out that soil as well. So you can see the ever encroachment of poor farming techniques, over chemicalization of land, which is then taking away the biodiversity of the landscape that we need. The Industrial Revolution, the only reason this planet survived the Industrial Revolution is because of the Green Belt. To remind your listeners, Carbon exchange is what is provided for us by, excuse me, our green areas. So the plants suck in the carbon and they emit the oxygen. And that's why this planet has been able to survive over all of the damage that the Industrial Revolution has wrought, as it has accelerated into what we have today. So at the same time, we're over exploiting for agriculture, reducing the green belt. We are increasing our corporate manufacturing and industrialization. So we're not giving the natural world a break. Because of that, we need to take the responsibility of recreating what we used to have. There are ways to do this, and permaculture, agriculture, no zero-tilling soil, regenerating biodiversity into soils, all of that is a possibility of recovering land which we have destroyed. It takes about 1,000 years to create 1 inch of topsoil. We can do topsoil by carefully composting only biodegradable material, carefully composting it, carefully processing it through vermiculture and all sorts of composting methods which need to be applied in order to say, yes, this is clean compost, adding those organic materials to soils that are in need of regeneration, and you'd be amazed how quickly it all comes back. Nature is wonderful.
Go ahead.
Nature is extraordinary. A lot of things are dormant in the soil because they've been burnt out. Introducing them and reintroducing them over and over and continuing to foster them and cover the soil with crops continually so that nothing escapes through the soil, uncovered soil. The carbon is not escaping through the uncovered soil. It's staying in, it's sequestering in the soil in order to do its wonderful job.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot.
It's incredible. Yeah, I don't know if you know they've realized that the Amazon basin, most of the soil there is man-made, and this is ancient technology where they took a variety of things and smoldered them and made this enormously fertile and almost self-replenishing supply of topsoil, and that's why it's so easy to grow things there. In the Amazon basin.
Do you mean that lands that have been exploited? Because I've been to the Amazon basin a lot, and I can tell you that in the jungles of the world, whether it's the Amazon basin, whether it's Indonesia, whether it's all over the world, whether it's Borneo, I've trunched through those jungles, and I can tell you that it is a known fact scientifically that decomposition happens very rapidly in jungles. Therefore, there's very little topsoil on the ground, on the floor of those rainforest jungles, because decomposition happens and goes back up into the air much faster. If you come into a cut area.
I suppose it does, depending on what you're talking about. I'm talking specifically where this thing called terra preta is, where it's a man-made ancient form of creating a viable soil. But the Amazon basin, as you know,
will you send me all of that? Because
I will.
As you may know or may not know, if you walk into an area of a jungle that's been cut and the sun has changed the whole biodiversity of that area, because it's immediately exposure immediately destroys everything. You look at that soil and it's sand. There is no soil, it's sand, because the topsoil doesn't really exist. It's the process of decomposition that creates whatever is then going to go up and be recycled. It's the perfect recycling tool. But if you say there is now a man-made area, I'm very interested in knowing about that, and I wonder if you'll send me a link to find out more about that, because
I'll send you a source as soon as we're done.
We need to share information. It's not it's not my information it's my information to share. So we need to make sure that we're working in collaboration with one another so that we can share what works. We need to be involved in the restoration of this planet as soon as possible.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Right. Like right now, you were saying on another interview when I was doing some research about how, and this is the perfect analogy. This is a spaceship that we are on with no windows, just air. You can just go high as you want.
I borrowed that from Buckminster Fuller. So you know who Buckminster Fuller was?
The
inventor of the geodesic dome, the inventor of the life support system on all of our exploration into space. Bucky, I spent New Year's Eve once with Bucky, and he called this spaceship Planet Earth. So I keep him alive in my memory by referring to his title for this planet.
Yeah. In my hometown, there is a geodesic dome house right on the coast of the water between the bay and the delta. And so I always think about Buckminster, like that's when you see one of these things, you're like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden you find out about Bucky and you learn about him.
He was extraordinary. He was so enthusiastic. He wanted to impart so much to everyone and make them participate and give them a reason to come and change things. He was fabulous. And that's what we need today. We need to be inspired to do whatever we can. For all the young ladies that are listening who feel and think of themselves as environmentalists, please, please, please look at the labels of the clothes you buy. Are they biodegradable? Because some of these miracle fabrics will remain in the dump for the rest of eternity. Unfortunately, the Balkan War was such a horrible, horrendous event. And there were many mass graves of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who were executed. It was last summer or the summer before, I can't remember. Some of those graves were exhumed, so that those remains were exhumed. And of course, the human remains were decomposed. But guess what wasn't? Guess what was intact?
The clothes, right?
The clothing, the sports shoes, all the Nikes or the Nike copies, all of them looked brand new. That's a dramatic example of what I'm talking about. So even in the choice of what you buy, you can be saving the planet. So just think about it.
I went to the Balkan War at the end of it, and the Dayton Peace Accords came out. In my job, I was a spy, and so we would go into the towns and villages, and you would come across these mass graves or all these fresh graves. You would also see the homes, and you could tell what kind of village it was by the homes that weren't there, because homes that have this kind of house, this kind of the roofing mattered. And when you didn't see a certain kind of house, but you saw a bunch of bombed out houses, you knew who they didn't like in that village. And so not only do you have this legacy of chemicals in the ground and plastics and all these other things, but also the ethnic cleansing and that legacy. We don't see it today because it's been too long, but those people still aren't in those villages, and it's
ethnic
tragic.
Is going on every day. Ethnic cleansing has never stopped. Maybe not on that scale, but certainly it still exists. There are pockets of it all over the world.
Sure. Myanmar / Burma / whatever we're going to call that country. They're killing each other. And we couldn't even tell the ethnic difference if we were there, but they sure as heck can.
Yes, on that very fluid border between Bangladesh and Myanmar. What's going on there?
It's dangerous there. Yeah. You have been all over the world. What fascinates you? Like when you think about the places you need to get back to, where do you need to get back to see more? Or where have you not been that you need to go see?
Well, you were a spy. You know what I'm talking about. Many of the places that we went to and that I went to in the 1960s and 70s, you can't go to anymore, or they don't exist,
right?
Or they're too dangerous. I spent a lot of time in Papua New Guinea. A lot of time. Bill Holden and I traveled a great deal in Papua New Guinea. We went up all rivers. Also, we made collections of art, and we loved the Margaret Mead approach to travel, learning about the differences and the similarities of people. And those places now, you can't go. They're the tribal wars that go on, that continue to go on, and the expats, the foreigners, they unfortunately discovered gold in the highlands of New Guinea, and they started to destroy the entire mountain range there with sort of very high-speed hoses that would sweep away the dirt. Well, the dirt then caused landslides, which then killed people and entire villages. And I mean, do I need to keep going on? You've seen enough of the world to know what dramatic changes have occurred in the last 20 years, 30 years. And some of the places are all those things that our curiosities sent us out to experience are gone.
Yeah. You're talking about a lot of what the Western world does to, like, here in California, we act like we don't have any oil in our ground, even though you and I both know there's a tar pit right down Hollywood almost. And we love to offshore that mining, that damage to the environment. And in places where they don't, you can't spray a hose at a wall here in California to get gold out of the Sierra. You can't do that anymore. And you certainly have to take care of the employees who are, keep them safe here. And so they go to places like Papua New Guinea and all these other places where the care that should be taken to give us gold or whatever the mineral is, that's not present in those places. And that belongs to
what about all the lithium batteries? What about all the lithium?
And cobalt.
Do we want to start? Where are they from? West Africa, where children are thrown down holes.
Let's talk about heart to heart.
And we're really happy. We think we're doing something in our electric car. Oh my God.
I know. Yeah.
That I do not care about what people think about what I say. I'm telling the truth, and the truth needs to be heard.
Yeah, you're right about that. And we hate the truth. We hate that we spend a lot of carbon taking oil from Africa and Asia and bringing it here to the United States. And it would be cheaper, safer, better all the way around for everybody if we just used our own supplies, if we're going to rely on.
Well, there was something, I was doing some additions to my house a few years ago, and there was something astonishing to me. Trees were cut in the United States. Those trees, the board footage, was sent to China to be made into plywood, which then was brought back here to be sold to us. And we were told that it was still cheaper to do that than to manufacture in the United States. How is that possible? How?
I don't know if you know this, but the big superliners, the oil tankers, they pollute more than all of us combined.
And what about those big ocean liners that have 3,000 people on them?
Yeah, I don't know how they fuel themselves, but probably the same.
The bilge, where's all that poo going?
Oh, yeah.
Where's it going?
Yes, right?
And then you want to jump in the ocean and swim?
Yeah. Okay, we got to get to happier
talk about heart to heart.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, the 1980s were great. We were carefree and everybody was mindless.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. But it's important to have these kind of conversations. I do want to talk a little bit about part of the reason why you're here too is some of the recognitions that you're being picked up for being an agent of change, for being this voice that makes us uncomfortable so that we can say, I need to do something, whatever that thing is. So let's talk a little bit about some of these projects that are coming up where you're going to be recognized, whether it's in the book or et cetera. And I'll shut up and let you talk because you know more about these things.
Well, I was recently among an extraordinary group of people, all of whom were as passionate and dedicated to their causes as I am to mine. And we were recognized, our work was recognized by an ebook, which is available for free for anyone who wants to find it, as a form of inspiration to galvanize people to our causes. Not necessarily because we're wanting them to be contributors, but we want their energy to contribute and for them to use us as an example to then go and propagate the faith, really. And it was endorsed by the United Nations, and the introduced in a luncheon at the UN during the General Assembly, which was an experience, I can tell you.
Yeah, was that called the Agents of Change Awards luncheon?
Those were the Agents of Change Awards, and the book is titled Visionaries of the Future.
Visionaries of the
Vision
Future.
for the
I'll put a
Future.
link for that on here so that people can find it. Yeah. How much work are you doing in the arts? I mean, we're talking a lot about the environmental stuff, which is critical. Do you even have time to do things like, because look, you sing, you act, you do all these things. What are you working on artistically?
At this moment? Not much. I am working with, I had a luncheon with people from Stanford University. I am going around the country meeting with people at various universities with whom I have been discussing the possibility of them sending some PhD candidates and master's degree candidates to come to study our methods of soil regeneration in Kenya, hosted by us, and we would provide them with housing and the work with our teams on these projects so that they might use the models of these projects as their thesis for their degrees. So that's occupied me a great deal.
Yeah, I bet. I know like my friend Dave, I mentioned.
I have to add, it's highly creative because this is not necessarily in my, how shall I say, my skill set. I had to learn.
I told you about my friend Dave, who runs the Irvine Nature Conservancy. They spend a lot of time trying to continue to expand not only their volunteer base, but also to inspire young minds to say, hey, look at this incredible thing you can do. You can learn everything about raptors and be a hawk, vulture kind of person who does this for wild spaces. I mean, the condor of California was saved by people like that, who were kids who loved animals.
It's still on the endangered list, but it's
right. But it's going in the good direction now.
As with fingers crossed, we have to be diligent because education is a very important component to conserving and preserving this precious wildlife that we reintroduce to the alleged wild, which is hardly in existence, where there's hardly a place on this planet where human beings have not put their foot, and sometimes too many of their feet. So we continually have to educate people as to why you don't shoot birds out of the sky, why you don't think that those beautiful big things that are floating around are something for you to play with your what's it called, these things that everybody wants to fly. What are they?
Drone.
Can you imagine that the drone people are lifting all of the restrictions on drones being able to be flown over airports or private residences? Or how is that possible that this government is allowing that to happen? Invading my privacy, your privacy, invading areas of some idiot was playing with his drone, and it flew into one of the vital aircraft that was sent from Canada to help drop water and retardants to fight this fire. What is that kind of an idiot?
Yeah.
What kind of a jerk is that, who's more important than anything else? If people can't control themselves, then the government has to control them. How dare they lift these restrictions? People have shown that they can't be trusted with these damn things. They've already proven it. So why are they even allowed to fly them, let alone sell them?
Yeah, I don't know.
You tell me.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to understand, and they're becoming a big part of war. So we're going to get more of them. They're going to become more dangerous, more.
That's great.
capable.
It's fine, but put them in places where you take your children to a park, to a playground where they can play because they're safe. Well, if they're playing with drones, take them to a place which is exclusive to the drones, where they're not going to bother anybody else. They can crash into each other and have a wonderful day, but not crash into an airplane.
Yeah. You know, there's absolutely going to be someone that does a TV show doing drone demolition derby, and they're going to build these extravagant drones. That's absolutely going to happen.
That seems to be what everybody wants. So that's great. Yeah. Well, if that's your entertainment, that's fabulous.
Right.
Why not? But do it in an area that is not going to bother the rest of the world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. Like, that's part of the conversation. How do you, I'm curious of your thoughts on this too, because there's conservation, preservation, and use. Like, I want to walk in these hills. How do we manage to leave things alone enough so that they can thrive, but also get a chance to enjoy the beauty of, I don't know, Monument Park out in the Great Western Desert? How do we balance those things?
Education. I think that there should be, at every entry point to any of these fragile areas, there should be either a lecture and everybody be reported if they leave any refuse, that they are reported, that they have to do an inventory of what you take in, so that when you come out, you have to have all that stuff on your person so that you've not left anything. You've left it in the same pristine condition that it was when you thought it was your right to go tromping along over there. Stay on the path.
Right.
Don't destroy. And what your feet actually destroy when you're walking in those lovely areas that you need to see.
Yeah.
Well, if a million people needed to see it, it wouldn't exist anymore, would it?
No,
so human beings need to be controlled, because we have no idea how to control our own behavior.
Yeah.
And
nobody loves inhumanity more than humans. That's for sure.
We destroy more than we protect. It can't recover. We're the most destructive species on the planet. There is nothing more destructive than we are. If we're educated to understand that, maybe we should be educated to understand that it's our responsibility not to destroy. Wouldn't you think that's right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm just using my friend Dave because he talks about this space quite a bit with me, and it's fascinating. But he talks about, like, when we close a park, it's because the park needs a break from us. You know, we're glad that when the park is recovered, we're glad to have people come back. But these spaces need time to refit. We can't just use all the time.
Precisely. But what about how long is it going to be able to recover? How much more damage do we need to do? I mean, what's the level of damage that's okay to do?
Right. And this goes back to stay on the trails thing.
We don't seem to bridle ourselves. We just want to kill everything. Look we can't even leave Antarctica alone. We have to go there with our fabulous boats that are putting pollution into this pristine water. What's that all about? I understand scientific studies, but tourism? Please.
Yeah, you got us drifting into the bad news again. God dang it. Because I want to say this too. So maybe you're aware of this, because I've had a lot of people on my show, and one of the guys is concerned about the ocean. And so I think the number is 1972. Before 1972, all of the existing munitions, boats, all the other stuff that's been dumped into the ocean doesn't count. Internationally, like, we can't even deal with that. So we're just going to say it doesn't exist. So there's actual poisonous metals and the accelerants that blow up from World War II or whatever it's going to be. That stuff's in oceans, and it's either eliminating all the wildlife around it, or the fish are being born with cancer. Like that's an adaptation, is they're born with it. And so there's all this stuff where we are just using the heck out of this planet. The planet is regenerative in so many ways, but we are just so hard on it. I don't know what to do about that.
That's right, Pete. And by the way, the pollutants that we put in, I mean, let's just talk about the cosmetic pollutants. We all have to have another cream, or we have to have another spray, or another this, or another that, to make ourselves look like the Kardashians. You know, I don't want to look like the Kardashians. I don't want to look like a plastic person. I want to look like me. And I don't, all of the refuse from these things like the scrubs on these little silicone little beads and everything get into fish in the ocean, and then we eat them.
Yum yum.
Hello. Are we
have
so
so much
stupid that we are not aware what we are doing to ourselves? How many people out of I mean, I've had cancer 4 times. So I thank God.
You do a lot of everything. You even got cancer a lot.
I ain't even had cancer a lot. Yes, I'm excessive. But I thank God that I have a wonderful team of doctors and a wonderful team of experts and other survivors, cancer survivors, who've helped me figure out how to live with it and how to make it meaningful in my life, which is maybe why I'm such a vociferous talker.
But you're full of experience, and here's, I'm a big believer in this, Stefanie, from my time working in combat zones, is ground truth, right? You said, I went to the jungles, I went to Papua New Guinea. When you see the actual thing, you're not up in a spaceship talking about something, you're actually on the ground walking around, you talk to the people, you see the impact, it changes what you know, and so you can have a better understanding of what a pathway might look like if there is one.
But not everyone can do that. So how is it that, what is our best possibility of being able to convey to people what that experience is like, not for them to want to share that if they don't want to do that, but to understand the ramifications of our damage, as seen by the fact that we have been to the places that have been most impacted by human exploitation. Not for everybody to do, and it's not necessary for everyone to do. It's just necessary for people to listen and be conscious of it, not be asleep because they're on their phone or they're got buds in their ears walking down the street because, God forbid, they should hear a bird.
Or a drone. Oh my goodness. We have covered a lot of ground, and I don't want to run out of time before.
Have we offended everybody? I haven't offended everybody yet, have I?
So, and I don't want to get too silly, but we can't. I do want to ask you a silly question. So it occurs to me that the kids from Rydell High from Greece were all in school around the time. They would have been 1 year ahead of you from high school, right? And so when you watched Grease, did you think, I know what those kids are like, they're just like me? Or was that a completely foreign world? Like, how did they do and get in that era right?
Gosh, it's very hard when you are living something to also be objective about it. Your objectivity is limited. There are obviously, Greece didn't do it for me, but there was that wonderful movie what was it called? It was about that era. And
Rebel Without a Cause?
No, it was later than that. I think it was Spielberg's movie. I think it was Spielberg's movie when everybody was at a drive-in. What was that movie? American Graffiti. American Graffiti.
That's Lucas. Yeah, Lucas.
Was it Lucas? George Lucas?
But those guys all work together, though. You know how that.
But that really was meaningful. Going to the drive-in and everybody being in the cars and the food and the thing outside your window, and really did. That really, and the drive-in that they used as the model drive-in was very near my high school.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. Is there anything else? I thank you for indulging that question, because I know it's a little bit silly, but it's just, it's always funny when I think about, like, how things kind of can go together in terms of art and then someone's actual life. What else do you want to? There's so many things that you've done. It's so crazy. I'm not lying. Her bio is off the page long. So what else do you want to get into in these last just couple of moments here before we wrap it up?
Oh boy. What do you want to get into? You're the interviewer.
So if you're going to give one more to me, I want to ask about your singing, because look, people in LA, they are slashy. They're writers, producers, blah, 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 all these different things. So how often in your day-to-day life, not for anybody else, how often are you singing a song?
Oh, every once in a while I get together with friends and we sing, or we, I know a lot of people, lovely Michael Feinstein, or we at Eddie's home, we do a sing along. It's music isn't out of my life. I had a party the other night and we were singing. It is a part of life, and it's a wonderful feeling to sing and a great joy. And I was thinking about doing some singing lessons again, just to make sure I can still vocalize and all. I enjoyed very much performing in The King and I. It was a register of music that it would put me into the soprano register, which I'd never really engaged in. The life of a soprano, I'd never engaged in that before. So I was coached by an opera coach in England. And because I did it first in England and then did a tour of the United States for 10 months. It was an extraordinary privilege to do that wonderful play 8 times a week. A lot of work, but a wonderful privilege. And then among the others was we did the first revival of Sunset Boulevard. At the Algonquin Theater, which was the first time in 20 some odd years that it had been revived. And it was a very interesting feeling for me, because not only was the score demanding and exceptional, but here I was playing the part that William Holden won. Did he win an Academy Award for it? No, he won an Academy Award for Dalek 17, but he was nominated for an Academy Award for his performance in Sunset Boulevard, and it was the beginning of the making of his career.
Yeah.
It was always very amusing to me. What would Bill think?
Yeah.
That I'm playing Norma Desmond.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite musical?
Oh, gosh, I always wanted to do Mame.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for Jerry Herman, and he put me on the list of the top 3 people that he would accept to do a revival of Mame. And then the revival, he was going to do a revival of 3 of his shows. One of them was Mame. And he did a revival of the first 2. The first one was Cajafol. That did very well, but then the second one, I can't remember what it was, but it didn't do well. And so the funding didn't last for his Mame revival, and unfortunately never got a chance to do it. Certainly while he was alive.
Yeah, I actually got a chance to go to his goddaughter's house and talk about, they're going to do an auction of a lot of his stuff and everything. And so I got to really get into his life, and what a remarkable person. And I think it's neat. I think it's neat. All of what you super creative people have done. It's just, thank you so much for taking the time to do the things that you do, to go to Papua New Guinea, to show us and tell us that it's one thing to be on TV and have a wonderful life and be super entertaining that way, but you've done so much more than that. You've helped William Holden Foundation have their vision and get them going in the right direction. Just from all of us out here in humanity, thank you for doing that, because we need folks like you.
No, thank you. I'm very touched.
All right, well, let me wrap this thing up. For everybody, this is the Break It Down show. And look, right there, that's Stefanie Powers on my show. How great is that? So look, go and go to her website. I'll put a link up for that here in a second. It's also in the show notes. If you ever want to support the show, it's called the Break It Down Show. We got about 2,000 episodes. You got to have something out there you'll like. So if nothing else, thank you all very much for watching and hanging out with me on my birthday. Stefanie, thank you for hanging out with me on my birthday.
Happy birthday, Pete. Happy birthday. And
okay, hang on one second. I'm going to shut these things down. Hold on.